Ladies and gentlemen, if you're into chess at all and are actively trying to get better, then you know the struggle of gaining 100 points, let alone 5 to 10 ELO points pretty consistently. Well, this video is going to serve as an inspiration and a little bit of a roadmap of how to approach beating people who are stronger than you. I asked people in my Discord, join the Discord by the way, link is in the description, to submit games where they won in all sorts of fashions against people that had 3, 4, 5, even 600 or 700 points on them when they played online. And so I'm going to show you 4 games that have slightly different flavors and kind of try to get you into that mindset of not respecting people 200-300 points above you and putting the beats on them, at least a little bit, until you break through to that level. So the first game I have for you, and all the usernames are shortened and everybody gets an honorary GM title. The first game is between Ashish and Gallo. So we got India versus France, and we got a 7-15 versus an 11-21. And the first thing that I like to see here from Ashish is that despite the low rating, I mean, okay, you know, that's not an insult, I'm just saying, comparatively, 700, not the highest rating in the world, but a very solid opening choice. Plays a London. I don't hate it at all, and it only takes black 4 moves to already play something bad. The knight on c6 in front of a c-pawn in a London just isn't very good. Against this, white can play like a traditional London with bishop d3, etc. But I like what Ashish does. He actually knows exactly what to do here, which is to turn it into a bit of a queen's gambit with the move c4, and then develop the knight to c3. So step 1 is to remember your training and remember to punish slight inaccuracies by your opponent. Is black going to be much worse? No, but black already gives white everything white wants as early as like move 6, and black just is worried about castling and getting a normal position, but white is better. White is better because black took off center. White has 2 center pawns and can expand with e4, castles, etc. But let's see what happens, okay? Let's see what we get. We have castles, bishop d7, and this is just already like actually a borderline lost position for black. It's really difficult to see that because the plans in the London are generally around the knight coming to e5, but in this case, because black took off center, white should just play e4. White should take the full control of the center, maybe move the queen up to one of these squares, and then bring the rooks, and at some point confidently just march straight down the middle of the board, because you just have you have a golden setup. You have the 2 bishops and the 2 knights, but okay, white plays knight e5. I mean, I don't hate it, but again, you can't just stuff the same game plan into the same position every single time. Knight e5 works really well with the bishop here and the center closed, because the bishop stares over to h7. You have opportunities to go create some sort of attack. Knight e5 is not necessary because this knight is actually a target in these positions, which is why we expand in the center and try to attack. But black plays bishop d6, and now, you know, you don't need to you don't need to punish black here despite the 1.5 advantage, but you need to make moves that are solid enough where you're not really making like any huge committal decisions. Like, yes, white can take here or white can take here, but Ashish just goes back. I mean, he just brings the bishop back to d3. Not a blunder, and keeping the tension, you know, keeping the tension, not just jumping in there and trading pieces with the philosophy of if I trade the pieces, I won't lose them in the future. Okay, black plays knight d5. Which hits a couple of things, and now I would say Ashish kind of makes an inaccuracy and kind of loses himself in all the tension of the pieces and moves the knight to the middle, and now we have like a total cluster, you know what, a cluster fork, if you will, of pieces in the middle. It's not really clear what the hell's going on. It would have been better here to take on d5 and kind of clarify the center position, and then go after the queen side with moves like queen b3. Queen b3 is a tough move to see because you're just trying to play with your knights and your bishops, but try to get more pieces involved. Look at the weaknesses of black's position. Try to look around and see what's not defended at all and what you can practically attack. But okay, we have knight e4, and now black begins kind of chopping everything down. Knight f4, pawn takes f4, and black immediately swoops in to take the free pawn. However, at this point, Ashish does something smart. He kind of goes, damn, all right, I got kind of clipped there. Let me chop off these bishops. So knights for bishops traded. I don't completely hate this. I don't know if Ashish saw this combination all the way through or got a little bit lucky, but sometimes the position can be a little bit easier to see your possibilities, particularly if you've just made a mistake. So if you're playing someone who's like 1100 and you're 800, the more simplicity you have in the position, the better it will be for you, because if the position is all tangled, there's a much higher chance the higher rated player sees something better. Now, I'm not saying you should do that. That is a pretty decent strategy to torture anybody with a higher elo. I liked what he did here, but the second he made a blunder, he was like, all right, let me take the bishop, and now that my knight is hanging, well, I have the option of going backwards, but I also have this, and now he looked for check. He looked for check, and he found bishop takes h7, sacrificing and opening up this, and winning back the pawn that he lost. So very nice. Now here he could have been like, oh, queen h5 is mate, but what happens if black prevents it? Like, you can't play for one movers. The difference of this is that you're actually winning something back, and now we have the following position. Black plays the move d5. Okay, so like I said, simplicity is actually your best friend against higher rated players, because now it's just queens and rooks. Now, rest assured, if I got this position against Ashish and I was playing with the black pieces, no disrespect to him, I would win every single time. Because as you are stronger, you kind of... And by the way, so should a 1700, like somebody with 1,000 points or something. And that's just because... we see everything our opponent can bring to us in a simple position, but not at the 1100 level. At the 1100 level, even if you're 400 points of the underdog, you can create very simple but powerful plans. Like, for example, I see that there are rook lifting possibilities to go attack the king like this. Also the open file, also the potential pawn break to create a weakness in the center of the board. The position's balanced, but there's plenty of play. And now here comes Ashish. I like this idea. Black plays king g8. What even is that move? There's no need for that. There was no threat. And now here comes rook d3. And now black is like, okay, should I, I'm going to go take the open file. But now we've given something for white to play with. And now here comes f6, blocking the checkmate. So what does Ashish do? Absolutely love this move. h4. I mean, just absolutely love it. Because first of all, you never have any back rank problems. Now, h5, h6, right? And now rook g7. And black still isn't exactly sure how to meet this. I would probably play something like rook c4, giving up a7 and trying to take these pawns. Let's see what black does. b6. Okay, black is more worried about losing that pawn than being active, but now Ashish is a move away from having a nearly decisive attack. I mean, he just completely rotated his pieces and played very well, and now black is beginning to get scared. Black is beginning to run the king, but this could be very, very dangerous. I don't like rook h3. I don't think it's a blunder, but I mean, it's a little bit slow. You can consider bringing your third rook to the party here and trying to meet the king and hit the e6 pawn, but white gets a little bit of tunnel vision. And now black is quick enough with counterplay. But because white, and by the way, you see rook c4, rook f4, it's exactly what I said. But here comes h6. And this is the critical moment of the game. Black now needs to be very, very precise and deal with the pressure. And black fails to do so and loses the game basically on the spot. But why? Is it because of queen into h7? No, because then king e8, you don't want to trade queens, then you have no win. It's actually just because of this. And it's really hard to stop rook h7. Practically speaking, the best move here for black is just to put the king on e8. That is definitely the best thing to do. But now white has rook h7, and the rook is infiltrated. So it's not about the checks, but it's rather about the improvement of the rook to the maximum capacity before the queen lands the final blow. And if black plays something like rook f7 here, which just looks so natural, queen g6 is a killer. Because this rook is stuck beyond the forest. The rook escaped, but now can't come back, right? So now the rook can't defend at all, and white is just threatening a couple of decisive, blows here. Or to come around with the other rook. All right, to come around with the other rook. That rook might be the tipping point here. But what happens? King f8, and black walks out of the pin and directly into a fork. Now white scoops up the first rook, and then wins the second one. And the game proceeds for a little bit longer, but let's see how white converts it. White gets the queens off the board. Absolutely, absolutely smart play here. Just make sure not to accidentally blunder two pawns promoting against the rook. And white doesn't do that at all. Confidently goes here. Pawn goes to serve as the decoy, picks up the other two pawns, and the game is just simply over. So what was this game? This game was a very, very solid opening choice. Despite the low rating, a decent opening choice to be as solid as possible. The second that you blunder when the pieces get tangled, you chop down a couple of pieces to make the position easy to play, and you have to be precise for a few moves. You have to be precise for a few moves. and attack. That is the most important thing. Don't just play lazy moves. Actually pose problems for your opponent. Next game I have for you. This is a fascinating one. So a couple of overlapping themes. This one is nearly an 800-point gap between the players, 750-ish. So here, and by the way, all names are shortened. We have a Sicilian and we have a Grand Prix attack. So this opening is really tailor-made for attacking possibilities. So we have Bishop C4, D3, and white is worse. White does not get as solid of an opening as we had last game. Instead, here, black is kind of playing a very common anti-Sicilian Grand Prix, like trying to expand on the queen side, maybe knight d4 to chop the bishop down. But white plays a bunch of normal moves. Knight to f3, bishop e7, castles, and d6. So, I mean, black is sort of just doing normal stuff, you know? Not doing anything exquisite. And white here plays queen e1, which is a common attacking motif to try to get to g3 and potentially to g7. Black plays knight f6, still not really scared of white's attack. And we have kind of the following situation. Now, white here gets really aggressive. The computer really doesn't like this move if you run it through the analysis, mainly because after pawn takes f5, you don't really have an attack. You have one idea here that's going to pose a problem, and if black plays king to h8, you are almost completely out of attacking options. Like, if you look at an engine, it's already telling you to play moves like a4, which you just don't want to do. So f5 is a little bit bold. In general, if you're going to play f5, you know, you can play it a lot further back. Here, the machine even wants g4, g5 before you play f5. So, you know, your openings are not going to be at the same quality when you're 700 points apart. It's just not going to happen. But I love the style. I mean, everything white is doing here makes sense. One step follows the other, and black has to be precise here. So black takes on f5, and is like, ooh, d5 looks really nice because, you know, I'm blocking everything here. Maybe c4 is going to trap the bishop. Great move. Honestly, a decent move. But now here comes bishop h6. Now, if you put this in a machine, it's telling you that black is winning. It's telling you that black is winning because after bishop to h6, there is just the very simple knight h5, hitting the queen and defending mate. And if you play queen to g4, this is not a threat. It's just not, because, for example, c4 comes, and if queen h5, now I can take the bishop. So the knight is not really hanging. You take the bishop, and this bishop just dies. I mean, it just dies, and white is down a full piece. You can check me, but the king will go to h8. However, humans are inherently bad at defending. Like, we're just not very good at it. Queen g4, right? And so what happens? Black is like, huh, damn, I really don't want to lose any material. g6. What? And just hangs a rook. Like, but it's probably like, well, I'm going to be fine because this person's so low rated. Like, how did I accidentally allow this attack? I'm still winning. But no, because now d5 is falling. So you never even got c4 in the first place. So you never got pawn to c4. So you're going to lose the rook, and then you're going to lose the d5 pawn, and the attack rages on. So we have fg6. White doesn't take the rook, but instead takes on g6 first. Perfectly fine. We have hg6. And here, for reasons I can't fully comprehend, white does not take this. White instead takes on d5. Not the best move, but I guess white really liked, you know, the swarmy nature of this attack and decided that the bishop was worth more than the rook. Queen takes g6 is now threatened. fg6 is impossible. So black has queen d6 to stop this or move the king. What does black do? Goes back to f6 and hangs queen takes g6, fg6, and this is not possible. Like I said, it's not possible. So queen g6 is made in two, but white doesn't see it. White doesn't see it, and you're gonna, that happens. Okay, that happens. Queen g6 is a super common tactical motif. Study it. You're going to miss these chances. You're going to have games where you lose to players like this, but you have winning chances. You're going to be so mad at yourself, but don't worry, it happens. Rook f7, queen g6. By the way, black absolutely here should have taken with the king. Knight g5 is not even a good move because the king is actually safe in the center. At which point, if you just keep marching forward, there is no attack. There's no threats. Knight d4, etc. Black is fine. But rook f7 is a horrible move because black just was too afraid of marching the king out and now is going to lose the rook. Is going to lose it. But, well, white plays an even fancier move. This is an even fancier move. Knight to g5, attacking the rook, and the rook's got nowhere to go. I mean, if you go rook f8, you get mated. So knight takes f7 is just impossible to stop. So black plays this, but now knight takes f7 check. white is up a queen. And even if you're 964 and your opponent is 750 points higher than you, this position is very convertible. Just don't hang anything. Don't make a one-move threat. Don't panic. What does white do? Rook f5. Okay. Trying to rook lift toward the king. c4, black does something. Rook h5, and that's it. Rook f5, rook h5. Bring another helper to the party. Don't freak out and play queen g7 thinking it's mate and lose your queen, or take this and lose. Bishop f8 is fine, but sometimes when the queen and the bishop aren't enough, you bring another piece. Just bring another piece. We saw this last game too. Bring another piece. And it took a little while here. White missed getting out of check by discovered checkmate, but white mated in a couple of moves with bishop to g7, double check, and mate. So a very nice game, honestly. Like, super nice game. Not a great opening compared to the last one, and I kind of wanted to show, like, different forms of openings, but I like that white just got aggressive. I mean, white was like, I got nothing to lose. Let me just play f5, and let me go for it. You can't always sit back and do nothing against the higher-rated players. You very rarely will win a game where they come at you with all the confidence and the pressure and somehow, like, screw something up. Sometimes they will blunder, but, like, that's not... Oh, my shirt is unbuttoned. Well, that's kind of embarrassing. Buttoned on this side. Anyway, hopefully you didn't catch that. Damn. Anyway, there you go. Higher rated players making mistakes. Next game I have for you. This one is between a 1200 and a 1600. So we're moving up the rating ladder, kind of collectively, but obviously last game we had our highest rated player of this entire thing. And this one is a disaster of an opening. I mean, I don't know what my sub is doing here. Listen, I don't know what kind of a chess they're teaching you in Slovakian schools, but e5 is not the way to go. You want to play e5, you need to at least get another pawn to help, or you need to not allow a queen trade. I mean, you just can't be trading queens on, like, this is not good. So I wanted to show you different forms, right? Like, you're going to also have worse position against higher rated players. The plan is just not to freak out. So we defend, but you're going to lose this pawn. This pawn is overextended. You don't have the capabilities to protect it. What does black do? Calmly wins the pawn, calmly winning. Just much better on move 9, 10. So what does white do? Trades once, okay, and now doesn't just chop like nothing, you know? Doesn't just chop, right? Knight to e3. We have castles and castles, bishop f5. Okay, so first of all, this is a terrible move, because if you're just giving away a knight for a bishop, like, you should take it, honestly. Bishop pair is worth a lot. And the thing about the opposite side castling is you always have things like g4, and bishops are just menaces because they have pressure through things. Knights can't pressure through other pieces. This knight is now not able to move because the c7 pawn is hanging. Rook g1, g4 is a nice way to create some counterplay, potentially on that enemy king. And then a rook infiltration on the 7th rank would be brutal here. You can't really do it, and be very careful of getting caught in the cookie jar, because this is death. Rook on the 7th rank that goes to jail is not the same thing as just... I mean, that's a very funny situation, by the way. Just rook completely trapped. Don't do that, right? So you need to make sure your rook can actually do some damage when it arrives there. So knight f5 here, good move. It's not the same thing as trading when you're losing because you're getting the bishop pair. White gets aggressive, but the problem is that the bishop now lives. And rook g1, like, white is lost. White is lost, and black needs to be accurate. Jump in with the knight, continue the initiative, like chop, 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 paralyze white. At some point, come in here to trade off the active rook and leave yourself with the active rook. White is just super passive. But we have rook d8, bishop e2. White is playing solidly, not blundering anything. I mean, maybe slightly worse, but not making any huge mistakes. Black goes for the trade. Knight takes d1, bishop back to c6, and, you know, white is just playing. White hasn't made any disastrous decisions from losing a pawn in the opening. And one thing I would like to tell you, this is a rapid game, 15-minute, and white is playing really quickly. So black is actually taking their time, which is good. You should take your time, but one of the ways to create counterplay is on the clock. And if you're good enough at playing solid moves that don't do a lot and play them fast, you will put pressure on your opponents. That the clock is a piece. I'm not going to try to tell you all to play really fast and hang all your pieces, but it's true. And at this point, I like what white does. h4 and now h5. Both sides begin just throwing haymakers, just pushing their pawns as far as they can. b4, knight e4. The thing about black's play, though, these pawns are now getting completely split apart from each other. And what's happening on the other side is this. I love this. h4, h5, and not taking, but clamping that bishop. First of all, that's going to be really useful for winning the bishop or trapping it, but it's the fact that the king is now stuck to the back rank. That is a very non-traditional way of playing the position, and h7 is a liability in all endgames. If you win that pawn, you're borderline winning. So flank pawn pushes, particularly when your king is not castled to that side, super useful for breaking apart a castled king safety, restricting piece movement, and creating long-term endgame prospects. And I say that for a reason. Rook d4, knight c5. Where is black going to attack you? I mean, white has created a really solid structure. Black is really struggling to come up with an attack here, and white actually makes a fatal error. White gets their knight trapped in the center of the board. Beautiful find here by black, who left themselves enough time to pause the fast play and go, oh crap, that knight has no moves. f4, kabam, out of nowhere, that knight is stuck stranded in the center with nowhere to go, and black has to sacrifice it. And this game is far from over, because at this point, you're naturally nervous. You're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm beating a 1600. Oh my god, if you're human, knight b8, beautiful move. Immediately chops off the bishop. Now we have two bishops versus one. Let's go to the back rank, all right? Nice. I would have liked to see rook on the 7th here. Rook trade is beautiful here, but okay, we're going to harass the rook for a little bit. Now white actually starts playing in a nice coordinated way, but so does black. Getting that h6 pawn, creating flank counterplay. This is not over by any means. I mean, it looks over because you have like the eval bar, whatever, you have the, and you're not playing this game, which is why you're not nervous. Bishop f2. If black wins this pawn, it's 4-0. It's an avalanche of pawns. So white needs to be super careful. These pawns are still pretty annoying. So white plays king d2, avoids losing any material, but hangs another pawn. This is actually a disaster waiting to happen. Disaster waiting to happen. White needs to get themselves together. Bishop b6, nice. Nice, king is safe, not walking toward the kind of blockade, but walking where the king has more free space, all right? It's a pasture-raised chicken. Those are the best types of eggs, by the way. Rook d5, king f3, h5. Black now goes for that counterplay. The king is safe. Bishop c6, and I mean, black's just doing a great job, like not dying here. But so is white. I mean, white is not allowing, like if the rook goes to f6, it gets trapped. It gets completely trapped here with bishop to d8, right? So rook b5, bishop d4 is actually a mistake, because black should trade, and you've lost too many pawns for your own good. But black is like, I don't want to trade pieces because I'm losing. I would rather not trade bishops. I would rather hang mate. I would rather hang a mate. King h7 and rook h8 is checkmate, and white wins. Obviously, black would not rather hang mate. Black blundered that. But this game wasn't clean. It was not clean. Black put up a titanic struggle after making a blunder, but I wanted to include it because white played solid enough in this game. And these are the kind of games that you're going to be winning against the higher rated players usually. Not what you saw the last two games. This is much more of a realistic victory where you put practical pressure on the opponent. Maybe they're winning. They have to put you away. They don't. And you slowly build your way back on the clock, on the position. You take your chance, but then you don't do it in a clean way. And then you get one chance, and that is your one chance, and white took it with rook c8, rook h8. The lessons from this game are, number one, learn your damn openings, because this is terrible. Move 4, you have no more chances to win, even though you did. But what I'm saying is you have to know your openings a lot better than this. Don't trade the queens this early. Put some pressure on the person that's playing the Pierts or the King's Indian. But the other lesson beyond that is be solid. Stop the bleeding, stabilize, and play them on the clock. Play solid, quick moves. Make sure you have a time advantage, right? When the game actually starts kind of moving along, create counterplay on it in terms of opposite side castling situations, and you have to see the forcing moves, the moves that create threats, the knight journey to create some threats and make your opponent accidentally tie their shoes together, the moves that create the chances, attacking the weaknesses, finding these ways to attack your opponent. White deserved this win, the way they played. And the last game that I have to show you, this one's with the black pieces. This one is also, I mean, I wanted a game with the black pieces. There was not a lot of people who submitted games with the black pieces. I didn't like some of the games with the black pieces that were submitted. I like this one. I really, really do. So we're going slightly back to like beginner, borderline intermediate territory. We have already a very weird opening. We have an Aljochin's defense with like some weird center tension with the knights and e6. Okay, opening doesn't matter. Neither one of these players really has a huge amount of opening expertise. So d4, bishop e7, and c4. Okay, so I don't exactly know what's going on here. White really doesn't want to develop any pieces. Black takes on c4. Bishop takes c4. And now I would castle. But by the way, you can already begin punishing your opponents, your lower rated opponents. Bishop b4 if pawn obviously takes. And if this, the queen is no longer protecting this and you're just winning. You win on move 9 because you're threatening the whole lot. Everything. Bishop b4, queen c4. And you're just doing you can crush people as a 700 who are 1,000 because they're just going to totally malfunction in the opening stage of the game. But okay. Castles, like, again, solid development. Black just develops all their pieces. Bishop e3. Now, this is the moment in the game where all 700s go completely astray. They just do something completely nuts, and it happens. It happens actually immediately in this game. Queen d5. One mover trying to activate the queen, put some pressure on this. The problem is that White's position is really good, and White can defend and attack at the same time, and that's the stuff you have to foresee. A better move here is rerouting the knight to the middle to trade against this bishop and have a very powerful light square bishop for the duration of the game. Also to create a pawn break against White's center, which could potentially undermine this and gives Black a lot of play on the c file. But knight b4 is no 700 plays knight b4. I'm not even sure 1000 plays knight b4 because it has no threat. You don't know why you're going there. You would much rather play queen d5 or a6 even. a6, sure, play a6. And this is a great trade for Black. This bishop is the god of the diagonal now, right? So. And then if White retreats, for example, after a6, you chase down this bishop. You chase this bishop down. You play b5 and knight a5, and you force that trade. That is what you want to have the superior light square bishop. But it doesn't take very long for Black to lose this game. Do not pin yourself. Black did not go back to where they came from because psychologically that's really hard to do. And maybe Black didn't play out here because maybe they didn't see it. It's just sometimes hard to see squares in congestion. It's also really hard to move your queen in a space like this because you're like, oh my god, there's so many pieces around. I'm gonna lose my queen. How? Have you even found a move that creates a threat? Oh my god, knight d2. Okay, what are you afraid of? And by the way, you're gonna land a checkmate there potentially. So don't be scared of this abstract nonsense, but also don't have an ego. Don't just not go back to where you came from because now you're in a pin. Don't pin yourself. Now d5 wins for White, but White doesn't see it. So now the game goes on, queen b3. And I like this, a6, because you notice the bishop doesn't have a lot of breathing room. And now you're starting to fantasize. You're really fantasizing over here. And White is just sort of making awkward improving moves. Black is better, but it's not really easy to see why. Queen b5. For whom is this queen trade better? Takes. I mean, you can argue that this is kind of annoying, but it's better for Black. These bishops are better than this bishop and this knight. We have some very tangible game plan here that Black utilizes immediately. So very nice, like good play, solid play, one blunder. White doesn't see it. Now here comes bishop f4 and that move does nothing. You take on a2. And now the rest of this game is just about this pawn. Now there is a blooper here. Black just doesn't take this. One bishop diagonal they saw, but not the second one. They just completely forgot about this. But this is how you know it's a game of low-rated players. You know, bishop b3 played. And now White gets scared because White's like, oh my god, I'm hanging 2 rooks. So I'm going to sack. And I'm going to go for this. Now, it's so much better to play rook b1 here. I mean, oh my god, it's so much better. I can't even stress this. Because what happens now, b2, you could just push the pawn out of the way. And Black is just swarming with counterplay here. And this is probably like the final moment of the game that Black has to be super precise. Black needs to go on the A file. Black doesn't. Black goes down the D file. But White tries to create some odd counterplay over here. All you need to do now, not blunder back rank mate and not freak out. So there's no more back rank mate possible. There's not enough artillery here to win this game. The last thing I want to tell you here, this is a time practical advice. Black has about 20 seconds here. And Black is playing an increment blitz. Luckily, every time you make a move, you gain like 2 or 5 seconds. I'm not sure which time control it was. If you have 20 seconds here with Black, you are so stressed. If you're worried you're going to lose on time, promote your queen and take all of White's pieces. That way, if you lose on time, it's a draw and you don't actually lose the game and you don't want to jump out of your window. I mean, it's just the way it works. On the other hand, every move you play should be check. If you're worried about not checkmating in time, find checks or find escape paths. It's mate in 2 here. It's mate in 2. Rook h1, king to g4, queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn is a very hard move to see because you're looking at empty squares in time trouble. Rook c3, I don't hate it, but it's not a check. Only look for checks. Okay, we got the rook out of the way now. Okay, that's also not a check. But you're nervous, right? You're trying to make moves. Luckily, you're getting a bonus time. That's also that's a check. But now we're about to witness some funny stuff. That's not a check. You have a rook, a bishop, and a queen. One of them can probably deliver a check. That's mate in 1. That's mate in 1, but it's hard to see because you need to see that the pawn and the bishop, the pawn and the queen protect each other. Now it's made in a million different ways. Why are we taking the pawns? I understand we're trying to make it easier for ourselves, but this is how stalemates happen sometimes by accident. Okay, bishop f8. Okay, it's almost stalemate. You're so lucky this move is legal. Okay, now it's mate, queen h5. Oh my god, we're still taking stuff. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But we get lucky enough that the king decides it's had enough of living and walks itself to a mate. And black wins. Deserved, but terrifying. And this is kind of a summary, folks, of how you're supposed to beat people who have higher ratings than you. Simplify positions. Know your openings. Really know your openings and understand the game plans from those openings, because even if you play them wrong, as we've seen throughout this video, people have to be ultra precise to punish you, which is what we saw in the second game. Or even in the first game. You know, black had to be like really precise and played pretty well. But in the third game, in a game that black didn't have to be precise and got an upper hand, white hung around, put some clock pressure on their opponent, didn't just completely collapse and die, created counterplay at the right moment, made the right trades. And in every one of these games, at some point, the lower rated player actually put the pressure on their opponent. So let me know if you like this sort of concept when the underdog wins. And I don't know, maybe we could make this a series or something. Everything's a series on this channel. Anything is possible. Anyway, if you made it 32 minutes into this, thank you so much for your support. Let me know if there's anything you want to see in the future in the comments, or just tell me about your life. And I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.